Let's be real for a second. Homemaking isn't always easy. Some days it feels fulfilling and peaceful and full of purpose, but other days it feels like it can be a never-ending to-do list, and honestly a little lonely. My name is Mia and I am a mother to 3 young children under 4, and sometimes I do get a little bit lonely. You wake up to a house that needs cleaning again and you get through one task only to turn around and see another. The kitchen is messy, laundry is somewhere in the house waiting to be folded, and your brain is already racing through the million little things that need doing. And on those days it's easy to wonder, is this really what I do all day? I get it. I really, really do. There was a time when I resented it too. Not my family, not my home, but just the weight of it all. But something did change, and today I want to share what helped me go from feeling stuck and drained to actually loving being at home. Because there is a way to enjoy homemaking even on the hard days. And if you've ever felt burnt out or overwhelmed or just tired of doing the same thing over and over and over, keep watching, because I have some encouragement for you today. And trust me, you are not alone in this. So I remember waking up one morning and feeling like I was already behind before I had even gotten out of bed. I could hear the children calling for me, and I got up, walked into the kitchen and just stood there for a second, looking at the mess from the night before. There's dishes on the sink, crumbs on the floor, yesterday's to-do list, still sitting there, half finished. And I felt it. I just felt that heavy, tired, feeling. Because I knew that the second I started, I wouldn't stop. The second I cleaned up one thing, something else would need doing. And for a moment I thought, is this all I do now? But here's the thing, I didn't hate my home, I didn't hate my family, but I was starting to resent how I was thinking about homemaking. So I started making some small shifts. Not massive changes, not complicated schedules, just simple shifts in how I approached my day. And little by little, those small changes made me love homemaking again. And today I want to pass them on to you. Number 1 is to do projects or keep busy with fun things. One of the biggest things that helped me to stop resenting homemaking was filling my days with things that sparked joy and I actually enjoyed. Because listen, if your entire day is just cleaning, cooking and running around and sorting out your children, of course you're going to feel like you're just getting through it instead of living in it. So I started to try and make time for things I actually enjoyed, even if it's just 15 minutes. So for example, here I really wanted to get to a space in the lounge that I haven't done in a long time, and that's just repainting the windowsills in the lounge just to brighten up the space, and it made me feel so pleased and so chuffed with myself. But you could do stuff like rearranging the room or trying out a new recipe or switching up your cleaning routine to see if something works better. But even small DIY projects just make my home feel more like me. So I really enjoyed just getting this done today. And before you say, I don't have time for that, let me remind you, homemaking isn't just about keeping the house functioning. It's about making it feel like home. So if there's something that makes you happy, like it's gardening, I know spring is coming and I'm so excited for it. If that's decorating, we're in the middle of planning our kitchen renovation, so stay tuned for that and all that's coming there. You could do some baking or organising, just make time for it. It's not wasting time, it's filling your home with you. I used to think my home was just sort of what it was. If a room felt cluttered, if a space felt dull, I just kind of dealt with it. But then I thought, actually, I spend almost all my time here, why not make it somewhere I actually love? And the best part is you don't need a huge remodel or a big budget to create a home you enjoy. One thing I really like to do is declutter, because let's be honest, clutter makes everything feel heavier. You could also rearrange a room until it feels right and open and sacred for yourself and your family, and add those little things that make you happy, like warm lighting, a cozy blanket, a candle and fresh flowers. And suddenly homemaking doesn't feel like just another thing on the list. It feels like something you want to do, because when your space feels good, you actually feel good too. I really enjoyed making these pancakes this morning. They were so delicious and went down really well. They were actually I used almond flour and coconut flour, and they had quite an interesting texture. It wasn't something I'll be bringing out on pancake day, but it was still really yummy, and we added a few chocolate chips just to make it extra special this morning. So another thing is the importance of rest and of sort of Sabbath days. Now, I had a lot to catch up on today. I've got so much to get through. My list is so long because I took a rest yesterday. There's stuff all over the kitchen, there's so much laundry, but the rest was so worth it. And it's funny how our world is built around this idea that we should always be working, always hustling. And I know how easy it is to think, I'll rest when everything is done. And we've all said it, right? We convince ourselves that once we finish this one task or complete that project or check off a few more items from the never-ending to-do list, then we can take a break. But here's the truth, everything will never be done. It's a never-ending cycle and the work keeps piling up. And the sad part is, if you don't intentionally stop and rest, if you don't prioritize that, you'll just end up burning out. And I've been there. You know, I used to have this mindset where I felt like I had to be on all the time, constantly working, always moving, always doing. And yes, the hustle can be rewarding, but over time, I did really start to feel the effects, and I was tired all the time, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally drained. And no matter how much I worked, it felt like I was always behind. But rest, real rest, was something I didn't prioritize, and I thought I'd rest later, and the spoiler alert is that later never came. But here's what I learned through trial and error, that rest is not optional, it's absolutely necessary. It's a God-given gift and it's essential. And today I wanted to share how I've made rest a priority in my life, and how you can too. One thing that I really try and do on a weekly basis with my family, and we don't always do it perfectly and it looks different week to week, but that's taking a full Sabbath day. And you might be thinking, what's that, a whole day with nothing to do? And yes, that's kind of exactly what I mean. Obviously we have 3 young children, so I'm still doing all my duties and things there. But a whole day where I try not to do anything that's particularly productive, like I try and do as little cleaning as possible. I don't do any laundry. I try not to leave the house and get errands done or catch up on work. I'm just resting. And you know what? At first it feels really weird. The first few times I tried it, I had a hard time sitting still. You know, my mind would wander and I'd catch myself thinking, oh, I could get ahead on that project, or I should probably catch up on those messages I've missed. And it kind of felt like I was being lazy. But then something started to change, and slowly I realized how much I needed this time. I began to understand how deeply my body and my mind and my spirit needed to connect with God, and it was just craving that rest. And taking that full day to rest and reset became more than just a break. It became a necessity. And it gave me the space to reconnect with my family and with my hobbies without any pressure of doing anything productive. And over time, I started to look forward to it, and it's now become quite a sacred time for me, something I really try and prioritize if we can, so that when I return to the busyness of life, I'm more energized and more focused and more present. And the second change I made was creating a ritual of trying to take a 2 p.m. coffee break every day. Now, I know you might be thinking, a coffee break? Really? At home? But hear me out. I'm not just talking about grabbing a cup of coffee and rushing back to the children and the nappies and everything that you need to get done. I'm talking about a real pause. If you can, taking 5, 10, 15 minutes to sit down and drink coffee or tea, whatever it is that relaxes you and makes you feel calm. Now, for me, this looks like I'm kind of up and down a lot through that coffee break because my children are so little and need me so much, and that's okay. But every day at 2ish p.m, I try and stop what I'm doing, make myself a cup of coffee and sit down. I don't scroll through emails or respond to messages. I don't try and check anything off my to-do list. I just let myself be for a few minutes to sit and breathe and sip my tea or coffee and rest. And it's a small intentional break, but it makes all the difference. And I don't think you realise how much your mind can get overloaded by non-stop activity until you actually pause and give it a break. And the few minutes of slowing down helps me to kind of reset. And it's like a mini recharge for my brain, allowing me to refocus and get back to work with more energy and more clarity. And if I don't do this, I just keep pushing through, telling myself, I'll rest later. But we all know what happens when we say that later turns into never. So if you feel like you're always on and always moving and always pushing, try scheduling in some small breaks throughout your day. Even 5 minutes of rest can make a huge difference. You don't have to take a full hour or go for a long walk, although those are obviously great things too. But just give yourself permission to pause. And hopefully, come the end of the day, you will thank yourself. And you might be thinking, why does rest matter so much? And it matters because it helps you recharge, it prevents burnout, it can actually improve your focus and your productivity. And I do find that when I'm at home, it's hard to rest because I have so many demands on me all of the time. But just taking that cup of coffee, going to sit down with the children is so important, especially when we're constantly pushing ourselves without taking breaks and we're not doing ourselves any favours. Over time, we become less effective and more stressed and more likely to make mistakes. But when we give ourselves the gift of rest, we actually improve our ability to work and think and create. And rest is also essential for your mental and emotional health. Constantly working or doing things and doing all of the children's stuff without taking time for yourself can lead to a sense of anxiety, overwhelm, or even depression if we're not careful. When you take time to rest, and for me specifically resting in the presence of God, it allows me to reconnect with myself and with God and my needs, and to figure out what the needs are and to take care of them. And one last thing, you are allowed to rest. You don't have to earn it. Your value is not tied to your productivity. Your worth is not determined by how much you accomplish in a day. Your home will still be there when you get back up. Your projects will still be there and the world will keep spinning. But you, your body and your mind need that rest. So if you're constantly running on empty and feel like you can't slow down, I encourage you to think about rest differently, to try and schedule it in. Take a full day off to rest if you can. Really, if you can, do that, even if it feels strange at first. Create small daily breaks for yourself, whether it's a coffee break or a quick walk or a few minutes to take some deep breaths and do some exercise, run around, whatever it is for 5 minutes. Prioritize rest because you can't pour from an empty cup. When you make it a priority, you'll find that you're more productive and more creative and more at peace. You are allowed to rest, so take that break. Anyway, I've rambled on about that for too long now, so let's move on to the next point. So the next thing is so crucial, and that's focusing on your children instead of just the tasks. This one thing really shifted everything for me, and it changed the way I viewed my role as a parent and as a homemaker and even as a person. For a long time I thought my job was to get things done, and I thought I had to constantly be ticking things off the list and cook the meals, clean the house and get the laundry done. Check off every single item on that never-ending to-do list, and honestly, it was exhausting. I thought that once I could finish all these tasks, then everything would be perfect and I could feel accomplished. But then one day I had this realization that my children don't care about the list. And it sounds simple, but it was a breakthrough moment for me. My children don't need me to check things off a list. They don't care if the laundry is folded perfectly or if the house is spotless. What they care about is me. They care about my attention and they care about my presence. They care about how I make them feel, and they want to spend time with me, not just have things done for them. So I started asking myself, what if, instead of constantly focusing on what needed to be done, I focused on who I was doing it for? What if I made the time to slow down and be present with them, even when the list was calling my name, not just calling, but screaming my name, it feels like some days. But that was the turning point. Instead of just doing things for them, I started doing things with them. Like letting them help in the kitchen became one of my favourite moments of the day. Yes, it was absolutely messy. Yes, there were flour spills, and yes, it sometimes took 3 times as long to get dinner ready. But it was never about the finished meal. It was about the time spent together and teaching them something new and laughing together at the mess. And they loved feeling involved, and they do even when we do this today. And I loved that I could slow down and make that connection with them. And I didn't need to have everything perfect, but what mattered was that they were there creating memories, building trust and forming that bond with me. I also really tried to slow down bedtime too, even when I was tired and even when I felt like I had a million other things to do. I stopped rushing through the bedtime routine, which has always been, sort of a checklist. It's bath, story, tuck in, lights out, done. And instead I let bedtime be a time to slow down and to linger with them and lie down with them and talk about the day and chat and pray and listen to their thoughts. And I would let them ask more questions, and even if they're random or they share their little moments of joy and frustration. And I really try not to be in a rush anymore, and I'm so not perfect at this, and I've got so far to go, but when I'm simply there with them, fully present in those precious moments, it's just absolutely wonderful. And then I try to take that throughout the day as well, and not just at bedtime. Instead of rushing from task to task and always thinking about the next thing I needed to do, I try and start to sit with them and just stop what I'm doing and actually engage with them in play or conversation or just being there. So I think giving them 5 to 10 minutes of intense connection gives you back a good hour where they can do independent play, whether that's reading a book or playing a game or even just having a moment of quiet with them. Those small moments together have become my priority, and you can really see the change in them as I do those things. As a result of that, something incredible started to happen. Homemaking, which once felt like a never-ending cycle of tasks that I just have to get through, I started to feel like I got to live life a little bit more. And I started to see the beauty in the ordinary moments. Folding laundry while the children are telling me about their day or asking questions about how clothes get folded. Cooking dinner didn't feel like a duty when I had little hands helping me stir or chop vegetables. These are beautiful moments. And suddenly you end up not just going through the motions, and you actually live through the moments. And I'm building a home, I'm not just managing it. And I realised that this is what really matters. Tonight we're having a delicious supper of steak and asparagus. It's so simple but absolutely full of flavour. And my children really enjoyed this too, and obviously my husband does, and he's a meat lover. But I like to sear off the asparagus for quite some time in a garlic butter and let them get nice and crispy but soft, and then add the steak in at the last minute for a few minutes. Absolutely delicious, and you can't go wrong. The time spent with my children and those little moments of connection are fleeting, and they grow up fast. People tell me that all the time when they see how little my children are and how many we have of them. They grow up so fast, and if I spend all my time rushing through tasks and checking off lists, I'm going to miss those moments, and I really don't want to miss them. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. You are doing enough, even if your to-do list isn't finished, even if the house isn't spotless, even if today wasn't perfect. You are loving your family in a way that only you can, and I pray that the Lord blesses you in that. And that's everything, so don't let the weight of homemaking make you forget the beauty of it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.